pretty much the only thing that I enjoyed about this book. I was so disappointed. Problematic parts aside, I could not put this book down. I think it kind of made me a little bit depressed. Part of the reason why I started this channel is because I wanted to explore and experiment and try different things. And I think just making videos and posting them on YouTube is already kind of like an experiment for me. So a lot of the videos that I've been putting out recently, I feel like have been very safe. Like I've been trying to play it very safe, and I feel like I haven't been experimenting too much with my reading. All the books that I've decided to read are books that I would normally read. For this video, things are going to be a little bit different because in 2025, if you didn't know, there were 3 fanfictions, as far as I know, that were published in the same year, and 2 of them were actually published on the same day, which is kind of crazy, but or rather like released on the same day. I feel like there's also been a lot of hype around one of the books in particular, Alchemised by SenLinYu, and I decided for the last week to week and a half that I was going to read all 3 of them. I've never really been into the original ship that these fanfictions are based on, and I kind of wanted to see like if these books would be able to convince me to become a Dramione shipper, basically. So the first one that I read, and I read this on my Kindle, was The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley. I actually was planning on reading this in between the other 2, because the other 2 they're both kind of dark romance / dark fantasy. Well, one is dark romance, one is dark fantasy. This one seemed to be the one that was like the most lighthearted and the one that would be the least depressing, I guess. So this is the first book in the Dearly Beloved series. The second book is actually releasing this year in 2026. This was the only one of the 3 that was not adapted from a specific fan fiction by the author, but the author did write Dramione Fanfiction in the past. So it's kind of just like supposed to have like Dramione vibes, and this was released on July 8th. Now the interesting thing is that another one of these books was also released on July 8th. And I think it was like 2 different publishers. I'll just start with the stuff that I liked about it. The banter and the sort of comedic, humorous, the like very dry humor sort of writing style that this author has was pretty much the only thing that I enjoyed about this book. I feel bad saying that. I feel bad saying anything that's negative, but like I also want to be honest, you know? I don't want to say that something is good when it's not. I can already feel myself like wanting to backtrack and be like, not that this is not good. I fell asleep twice reading this book. The first time it was at night, so I just, I assumed that like, okay, it was nighttime, I was tired. I probably would have fell asleep reading anything, right? The second time was in the middle of the day. It was like maybe around a time that I would be tired, but like I don't normally fall asleep reading books. I have to be really tired for that to happen. And like that just tells you that this book is like, it's kind of boring. It was bland. There's not much going on plot-wise. There's not much going on romance-wise. It's just like, there's just not much going on. I did almost DNF it, and for me, like, if you know me, I have so much trouble DNFing a book. Like, I will push myself to read it, even if I feel like I'm not really that into it. And I'm not going to get into, like, whether that's the right thing to do or not. Like, it really just, it depends on the book, I think, and the time. But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. That's not what this video is about. But man, I was so disappointed. In general, this couple dynamic is supposed to be like an enemies to lovers, not necessarily rivals to lovers. I think like it should be like enemies to lovers, because they're usually on, the opposite side of each other. And I guess that is kind of what's happening here. They are on opposite sides. I don't even remember the characters' names. Hold on. Let me find out what their names are. So the girl's name is Orion, I think is how you say it, and then the guy is Osric. And Orion is supposed to be like, she's like the healer. They're each part of like factions, and she's part of the like healer faction. And Osric is kind of part of the like mercenary for hires, like they're like murderers, assassins, thieves, robbers, whatever. just like the bad faction. It didn't really make sense for them to dislike each other beyond like, I feel like I have to keep holding the book up, but I'm gonna put it down because I don't want to do it anymore. It didn't really make sense both ways, I feel like, I feel like everyone would kind of hate the mercenary for hire faction, so I guess Orions, I guess her feelings towards Osric would make sense, but it didn't really make sense why, like, he would hate her. The premise for this book is kind of like Osric needs Orion's help because he is sick and he needs healing, and normally the healer faction, I guess no one would really want to help a mercenary slash assassin slash thief, so he has to kind of convince her to do it. And then there is some like subplot stuff, but it's like, it's so bland. It was so boring. I almost didn't finish reading the book. I almost didn't finish making this video. Like, I was thinking about scrapping the whole idea because this book had just bored me to tears. Irresistible Urge is like, it's for the people who think that black pepper is spicy. And I don't just mean because like there's almost like no spice in this book, but I also mean that it is so bland. Like, if you don't like any flavor in your books, I think you would like this book. I was so disappointed. I thought of all of the three, I was gonna like this one the most, more than the other two. And spoiler alert, that was not the case. Once I finished that, I was like, it couldn't get any worse than this. Like, I know that the other two are gonna be more interesting. Am I gonna like them more? Are they gonna be better books? I don't know. But I knew that it had to get more interesting from there. So I continued, and I moved on to Rose and Chains by Julie Soto next. Let's see, where do we start with this? This was definitely more interesting than the first book that I read. This was more of like a dark romanticy, dark romance. I don't know what you would call this, but I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. But in this story, the character of I forgot their names again. Oh, perfect. There's a family tree. Brigitte is the girl, and Beaumard. Who? Tovin. So Brigitte and Tovin. In this story, there is a war, so they are actually enemies. They are on opposite sides of this war, and the side that Brigitte is on, the good side, loses to the side that Tovin is on. Essentially, like, not all the women actually, the men too. Some of the men and a lot of the women get auctioned off to the like members of the opposite group, the one that wins the war. And that already is like I understand why people are upset, because but hold on, let me finish. And there is a lot of sexual content in this. Let's just say, like, the people that are essentially slaves are used for some very explicit things, and I feel like I said, I understand why people get upset about this book because there's no real purpose to it. Like, it's just there, I feel like, as a, what's the word? A spectacle? It's kind of just a spectacle, like to shock, I feel like. Or I feel like that whole premise and that situation is almost used to justify the situation that Brigitte ends up in. Almost saying like, oh, it could be so much worse, like, I feel like it's used to convince us, the readers, as well as Brigitte herself, that like, you got it good. Like, you, despite the fact that you were still sold, and despite the fact that you maybe have to do some things you don't want to do for the sake of the situation, it's still much better than what could have happened to you. And that, I feel like, is problematic. Also, the writing style, I think, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book. I enjoyed Brigitte Knightley's writing. I think she just needed to work on her plot. But hold on, we're on Rose and Chains now. The writing is just very standard. Like, there's nothing exceptional about it. It was fine. The plot was fine. Problematic parts aside, I actually, like, I could not put this book down. And I'm like, I am judging myself for that a little bit. I feel like I fell for the spectacle. Would I say that I am like a hardcore fan of this couple now? No, I would not. The other thing that really bothered me was like, obviously, Brioni is to some extent a prisoner. And she, in the beginning, is like, you know, if you're a prisoner, despite whether the person is who's imprisoning you is treating you well or not, you wouldn't want to try to escape, right? And she talks about it. She thinks about it. She, like, plans to try to escape. But then she never actually does any sort of actionable items. She doesn't try to get out. She doesn't explore the area to figure out where the weaknesses are. Like, she barely tries. Anytime there's like something that I feel like should be like really gut-wrenchingly horrible, you know, like a death or something like that, she seems sad for like a second, and then the next thing you know, she's just thinking about Tovin. Wait, that's the right guy, right? Yeah, she's just thinking about Tovin. I think if you're going to talk about subjects like this, you have to do it in a certain way for it to be good. And for this book, it's just kind of like meant to shock the audience. It's a spectacle. It's meant to justify, I feel like, the situation that Brioni finds herself in. And it is very problematic. But again, like I said, like I could not put the book down. I think I finished it in like a day and a half. And I don't know what that says about me. Like, I am just judging myself a little bit. But I can't deny that I could not stop reading it. As far as like a spectacle goes, it does a really good job of being a spectacle. So that was an interesting time. I didn't expect that I was going to like this book better than The Irresistible Urge, but I did, unfortunately. Because at least things were going on, whether they were problematic or not, whether they were good or not, like something was happening in this book, and I appreciated that. But yeah, with Rose in Chains though, it is, I would say, much spicier, potentially the most spicy book of the three. Yeah, I think it's the most spicy book, but it is not the most shocking, surprisingly. After Rose in Chains, which I read this, got the ebook from my library. I got all 3 books from the library, actually, which is kind of crazy to me. After that, I read Alchemised. Oh, wait, I didn't tell you the notes for Rose in Chains. Like the information about it. So Rose in Chains is the first book in the Evermore trilogy, and the second book is also releasing in 2026. This book is based on an actual fan fiction. It's called The Auction by the same author. And obviously by the same author. And this was also released July 8th in 2025, which is the same date that Irresistible Urge was released. So I thought that was just really interesting because I think, as far as I can tell, they were released by 2 different publishers on the exact same day. So those are the notes, and I guess let's just get Alchemized out of the way too. So Alchemized by SenLinYu. The book is really, really fucking heavy. This is based on the fanfiction Manacled. It was released September 13th, 2025, and it won the best debut novel in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I think that this book kind of started the curiosity for me because not only the fact that it won debut novel, but I was seeing a lot of people on the internet, not the internet, but like YouTube shorts, pretty much. And I probably would have seen it on TikTok too, but I don't use TikTok anymore. So I saw a lot of people on YouTube shorts talking about this book, and every time I saw it, it was, you know, it was always positive. And I thought it was like really popular, but if you actually look at the Goodreads, what are they called? The ratings on Goodreads, there's not that many of them. I expected there to be more. I think there's like maybe 150,000 reviews. But I can understand why, because no one in their right mind would put themselves through this. Would put themselves through reading this 1,000-page book. This thing was a lot. It was a lot. It was so much. It was too much, honestly. This book messed me up. I think it kind of made me a little bit depressed. It is definitely not the kind of book for someone who has a weak heart, Do you know what I mean? I think you need a certain level of mental fortitude to be able to read this and still be okay after. And I don't mean that in the like influencer-y way of like, oh, this book destroyed me. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, literally, this book is depressing as shit. Like, it's so depressing. It is not a spectacle. It is a book about wartime, and there is a lot of violence. There is a lot of gore. There is a lot of very explicit, horrific things that happen in this book. Whether they're just discussed or, like, you get some detail of some of the really, truly horrible things that happen. So we're following Helena, who is part of the, like, good side. And then there's also Kane Farron. He's a really high-ranking member of the bad side. And his side of the war wins. And she ends up losing her memories. She doesn't remember a good chunk of the war. And Kane Farron is kind of tasked with... Sorry, I can't hold this book up for very long. It's so heavy. Kane Farron is tasked with kind of retrieving those memories from her brain, basically. There is a romance... But it's like, it's so messed up. This book is so messed up. I mean, I kind of knew what I was getting into to some extent, but I guess I did expect this to be more like Rose in Chains, and it's not like Rose in Chains at all. I feel like SenLinYu put a lot of thought and effort into building this political world, this magic system. So there's like magic system based on like alchemy and necromancy, and there's like different versions of it, like you can control different things. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect there to be so much like world building. I thought this was going to be like Rose in Chains. Like I thought it was just going to be more of like a spectacle. And I guess you can make an argument that this is meant to be a spectacle too, but I feel like it is a very, I guess, realistic depiction of a war in a world where people don't really act like human beings. I don't know. Actually, I don't know anything about real wars. I'm sure there were horrific things that happened in real wars too. I mean, why do people end up with like PTSD, right? This was truly awful to read. And I didn't expect it to be so dark, and I didn't expect it to bring me down as much as it did. I think it put me into a depressive state of mind for a few days while I was reading it as well as after. And you might be wondering, like, why did I keep reading it if it was making me feel so bad? I think it's surprisingly such a well-written story. I do think, like, you can see all the work that she put into it. You can see all the thought she put into it. And she really, of all the 3 books that I read, I feel like this book really went above and beyond to create a whole new world and a whole new story. It does dark romance really well in the sense that it's not like romanticizing the bad parts of a dark romance, if that makes sense. It is a little bit too long though, and I do think that there are parts that could have very easily been cut, and it would have made this story so much better. As it is, I do think that it is a little bit overhyped, just because I think a lot of the stuff in here should have been cut out. And I will be honest, there were a couple of pages, like somewhere around the 700, 750 page mark, there were a couple of pages that I kind of skimmed. There were some scenes that were like, I just feel like I had already read these scenes. Like there's so many scenes that are so similar to each other, and I feel like there wasn't much happening or progressing. There wasn't character growth, there wasn't plot growth. Is that the right word? You know what I mean. But like, they didn't really serve any purpose. I feel like the writing style for this author, she's still writing as if she is writing a fan fiction, as if she's writing short installments to a story that people are reading like one by one, or maybe like they might binge it if they're behind. But the idea is like a section of the story is being released every like week or something like that. That's what this felt like, and it does drag on at some points. It's lacking sort of the structure I feel like novels need to have to be considered a good story, or like to flow well, basically. And I think if I were to go back in time and read this again, obviously I would never choose to do that, because now that I know what's the contents of this book, I would not read this again. But if I had to read it again, or if I had to suggest to somebody else how to read this, not that, you know, I'm not like an expert or anything, but like how I would read this is I would read it as if I was reading a fan fiction. Unfortunately, I could not do that when I was actually reading it because I wanted to get this video out before Valentine's Day. You know, I don't even know why, because this doesn't feel like a Valentine's Day kind of video. Because my expectations were a lot different than what actually ended up happening. But the other reason too is because this is a library loan, so I only have a limited time with it. Otherwise, I'd probably have read like a chapter a week or something, and this would have lasted me the entire year. This book is definitely not for the faint of heart. If you're gonna go into this, again, I would break it up. I would make sure that I have things around me that are gonna bring me back up emotionally. And if it does get too dark for you, I would just stop. Just stop reading it. Because she did not hold back. It was well and truly, like, just so depressing. My expectations overall, these are just, like, now my general thoughts, but, like, my expectations going in, like I said before, was that Irresistible Urge was going to be the book that I enjoyed the most, and I expected it to be... Yeah, I mean, I expected it to be the one I enjoyed the most because I expected it to be more lighthearted. And I expected to not really enjoy Alchemised that much. I didn't expect it to have such a intricate and large political and like fantasy world. That part really just like, I thought it was gonna be like 1,000 pages of smut, to be honest, like, but dark smut. Oh, there's one more thing that I want to say about this is like the way that she chose to divulge like the past, like Helena's memories. I didn't really like it. I feel like it would have been better if she had been remembering things in parts rather than remembering it all in one go. A good chunk of the middle of the book is her past and what happened during the war. And I think it would have been more refreshing to be able to jump back and forth between timelines. So you get a little bit of like the current time and then you get a little bit of the past and you're learning the story in pieces. And I think it would have had more of an impact that way too. Back to the general thoughts though. So the expectations I had were that Irresistible Urge was going to be the book that I enjoyed the most. I thought it was going to be the most lighthearted, and it was, but it ended up being the one that I enjoyed the least, surprisingly. I think Rose in Chains was exactly what I was expecting, which is just like a dark romance. I didn't expect to enjoy that one as much as I did. I didn't expect to not be able to put it down. I didn't expect to be like to get got by the spectacle. And then finally Alchemised. I was expecting it to be a difficult read because I knew how long it was. Like 1,000 pages is kind of crazy, even for like a normal fantasy, like high fantasy. It's a lot to sort of deal with, to handle at one time. So I did expect it to drag. Again, I didn't expect the political system to be so intricate or the world building. I didn't expect to enjoy the magic system so much too. It was very interesting, sort of like scientific in a way, and actually Irresistible Urge is also very scientific, surprisingly. That was another thing I didn't expect with it, was like I didn't expect there to be so much like anatomy and biology and medical stuff in Irresistible Urge. This video is not really supposed to be, I wasn't really planning on like comparing the books to each other, because I actually feel like that's another thing that I was surprised by, was that each of these books felt very different from the other. Even though they're talking about the same romance dynamic, which is like an enemies to lovers kind of situation, but they each had their own story. They all felt very different. I was expecting it to feel like I was reading just the same story 3 times in a row, and it didn't feel like that at all. So that was another thing that I was really surprised by. And I guess like the final thing is like, did any of these stories convince me to be like a Dramione shipper? And I would say no, not at all. I don't know. I really love the enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers, dynamic, and I think Rose in Chains potentially had the best rivals to lovers, is what I would call it. Like, did that part the best than the other two. But I think I could have done without the dark romance of it all, like the war part of it. I think if we had taken like parts of Rose and Chains and Irresistible Urge and like smashed them together, I think that would have been the perfect book for me. I think, God, my thoughts are all over the place. I wouldn't really call this a dark romance. I mean, the romance plays a part in it, but this is really just like, it's a fantasy wartime story. And I think it's misrepresented a lot on the internet. Like, I think it's represented a lot of the time as, it's treated like it's a dark romance. And I think the dark romance part comes after. It's like, that's like the second plot of this book. The first plot, I feel like, is this whole war that's going on and the dynamics between the different players in this war. So while I did like it, while it did like put me in a really depressive state, I do think it's the best written of the three. Well, it definitely made me feel the most things. Not a lot of them, most of them just not good at all. Anyway, so after that experiment, which I kind of regret a little bit, but I'm not gonna say that. I am glad that I tried it out. I think, like, after hearing so much about Alchemised and finding out that there are these other two sort of fan fiction turned into novels, I did get really curious, and I'm glad that I kind of followed that curiosity and discovered that I am not a shipper of this couple, but I tried something new, and I think that's something to be proud of. I think. And I think I was just thinking about ending this video by talking about what I'm going to read next, because now I really need something that's going to bring my spirits up. And if you guys have any suggestions at all about like what I could read for that, please let me know. Right now, I did start, I'm very, very not that far into it. Very, very not that far into it. I started even though I knew the end, which I feel like it's not going to be a happy book, but it is at least starting off a little bit lighthearted. And then I do have another library hold. It's The Swan's Daughter by Roshni Chokshi. This is another romantasy, and I feel like this is going to be more lighthearted. At least I'm hoping. I think the story is going to be interesting. I'm hoping for a happy ending. I'm hoping for the two people who are in love to stay in love. I like that it says a possibly doomed love story. Skillful writing and intricate world building make this story a must-read. Within the dazzling setting lies a heartfelt tale of being different, of finding your true voice, and of the value of kindness. That sounds good. That sounds not depressing. And that is kind of what I'm looking for. So these are the books that I'm going to be reading next. If you have any suggestions on how to bring my spirits up, please let me know, because I need help. I want to read something that's going to make me feel good. My plan is to read these over Valentine's Day weekend, because it's also a long weekend, so I'll have 3 days. And wow, for once I'm not trying to read 3 books in 3 days. I am reading 2 books in 3 days. And this one's very short, so it should work out okay. But that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you watched up to this point, I am very grateful, and I will see you soon.